In mind to take on those characters in that story?
So Blake's gonna play every character ever. She says she's retiring. She's just gonna be in every movie.
Yeah, he's your favorite. So
Blake Lively could have chemistry with a rock. I could have been just a tree, and there would have been chemistry. She's that talented. So I take no credit.
It was supposed to be a straightforward film adaptation of a beloved book, It Ends With Us. But what unfolded was one of the most shocking Hollywood feuds in recent history. At the heart of this battle were three major players: Justin Baldoni, the passionate filmmaker who envisioned a faithful adaptation; Blake Lively, the actress desperate for a career resurgence; and Ryan Reynolds, the Hollywood marketing mastermind who allegedly pulled the strings behind the scenes. What began as a creative collaboration turned into a power struggle riddled with manipulation, rewritten narratives, and backroom deals. As allegations surfaced, friendships crumbled, and the industry watched in silence. One question remained: who was telling the truth? Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us was more than just a bestseller. It was a literary movement. The book had dominated bestseller lists for over 150 weeks, fueled by an intensely loyal fan base that resonated with its raw portrayal of domestic violence and survival. In 2019, Justin Baldoni, recognizing the book's impact, acquired the rights through his production company, Wayfarer Studios. He envisioned a film that stayed true to its source material, honoring survivors and telling a story that mattered. By 2022, discussions about casting began. Enter Blake Lively, a name that would soon become central to the film's unraveling. For Lively, It Ends With Us wasn't just another acting role. It was a lifeline for her struggling career. Once a promising Hollywood star, she had suffered a string of box office failures. Her last major film, The Rhythm Section, had been an absolute disaster, losing $50 million and becoming one of the biggest box office bombs in history. Other projects, like All I See Is You and Cafe Society, had also failed to make an impact. Meanwhile, her husband, Ryan Reynolds, had continued to dominate Hollywood, with the Deadpool franchise and various business ventures making him one of the industry's most powerful figures. Lively needed a hit, and this film was supposed to be it. What started as a collaboration quickly turned into a full-scale power grab. Blake Lively had entered the project as just the lead actress, but she and Ryan Reynolds soon began exerting unprecedented control over the film. Despite having no official role, sources revealed that Reynolds was heavily involved behind the scenes, not just in the film's marketing strategy, but even in rewriting key scenes. Lively had initially never heard of Colleen Hoover or It Ends With Us, but when someone in her car mentioned how huge Hoover's books were with Gen Z audiences, she saw an opportunity. She later walked into a small-town bookstore and was stunned to see Hoover's books everywhere, realizing this film had blockbuster potential. Suddenly, it wasn't just a movie. It was a career-defining moment for Lively, and she wasn't going to let anyone else control it. By mid-2023, as filming began, Lively and Reynolds were running the show. Despite not being credited as a screenwriter, Reynolds was reworking the script, allegedly claiming that it was a disaster and needed his expertise. This fundamentally changed the tone of the film. Instead of focusing on the realism of domestic violence as Baldoni had intended, Lively and Reynolds pushed for a more romanticized version, a story where love could triumph over adversity. This completely contradicted the book's central theme, that leaving an abusive relationship isn't a sign of weakness, but of strength. Lively's public narrative also began shifting. In an early interview, she claimed she was the one behind the film's creative vision, stating that she understood what the audience wanted. But when it came to the rooftop scene, a major moment in the film, she accidentally revealed on a red carpet that Ryan Reynolds had actually written it. This revelation caused an uproar, as it confirmed what many already suspected. Reynolds had secretly taken control of the project, undermining the original creative team. But the battle was only just beginning. As tensions grew behind the scenes, accusations began to surface. Blake Lively, once a willing participant in the film's production, now claimed that Justin Baldoni had mistreated her on set. Among her allegations was that Baldoni had fat-shamed her after she had just given birth, a claim that, according to Baldoni, was completely false. In reality, Baldoni had been nothing but supportive, acknowledging the pressures of Hollywood and understanding the body changes that come with pregnancy. Lively also accused Baldoni of inappropriate behavior, citing a conversation about consent he had on a podcast. The discussion, which was publicly available for years, was an open reflection on how men are shaped by media influences on relationships and boundaries. Baldoni had admitted in the conversation that, like many young men, he had once misunderstood consent due to cultural conditioning, but had grown to educate himself and others. But instead of engaging with the nuance of the discussion, Lively and Reynolds weaponized it. twisting his words to paint him as a predator. While this was happening, Ryan Reynolds allegedly launched a full-scale campaign to discredit Baldoni. At a Deadpool after-party, according to Baldoni's claims, Reynolds began spreading rumors among Hollywood insiders, telling powerful executives that Baldoni was a problematic figure. He allegedly pulled aside agents, urging them to cut ties with him, all while pushing the narrative that Baldoni was a threat to Blake. The hypocrisy was glaring. Lively, despite her accusations against Baldoni, had once willingly worked with actual predators. Years after Woody Allen had been accused of abuse, she had starred in one of his films without issue. Neither she nor Reynolds had ever spoken out against Hollywood's real abusers. Yet here they were, manufacturing a smear campaign against Baldoni based on out-of-context remarks. As the accusations escalated, Baldoni found himself backed into a corner. The Hollywood power structure was firmly in Reynolds and Lively's favor. Blake and Ryan had handed their opponent the ultimate legal advantage, and they had no one to blame but themselves. But every scandal has a tipping point, a moment when the tide turns, and the people who were once in control suddenly find themselves scrambling to regain their footing. For Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, that moment had come. But instead of a carefully planned PR move, instead of a strategic legal defense, their fate had been sealed by a single joke. A 5-word punchline that went viral in minutes, dominated headlines for days, and left their lawsuit hanging by a thread. They had walked into the biggest mistake of their careers, completely unaware of the consequences. And now, the world was watching them crumble. In today's world, perception is everything. A single misstep can be amplified, analyzed, and turned into a weapon faster than ever before. And the moment Ryan Reynolds cracked that joke on Saturday Night Live, the internet did exactly that. Within minutes, the backlash began. At first, it was just a few viral tweets, people pointing out the contradiction. How could Blake claim severe emotional distress while sitting front row at one of the biggest entertainment events of the year, laughing at a joke about the very lawsuit she had filed? But within hours, the story had exploded. If you claim severe emotional distress, your actions need to reflect that. You don't file a lawsuit one day and then appear on national television laughing about it the next. Baldoni's team knew this was a golden opportunity, and they capitalized on it immediately. Legal analysts pointed out that this one mistake could cost Blake millions. If the jury saw this footage, it could completely discredit her case. And if Blake's claims weren't 100% bulletproof, she wouldn't just lose the lawsuit. She could end up on the hook for damages herself. For the first time in their careers, Blake and Ryan were losing control of the narrative. They had always been masters of public relations. Every Instagram post, every late-night talk show appearance, every brand deal, it was all carefully curated to maintain their flawless public image. This was a disaster they hadn't planned for. With the Saturday Night Live footage now officially entered into evidence, Blake Lively's legal team found themselves in an increasingly precarious position. Their strategy had to shift, and they were left with only 2 viable options. The first was to discredit the footage, arguing that Ryan Reynolds' joke had been taken out of context and that Blake's appearance at the event did not contradict her claims of emotional distress. The second was to settle the lawsuit privately, accepting the damage that had already been done while attempting to prevent further fallout. Initially, they pursued the first option, contending that a single televised moment should not define an entire case. Her legal team maintained that just because Blake had been seen smiling and laughing in public did not mean she was not struggling behind closed doors. However, this argument quickly fell apart. The case was no longer centered around a single joke. It had become a much larger issue concerning the pattern of behavior that had unfolded in the public eye. Blake had filed a lawsuit asserting that she was suffering from severe emotional distress, yet she was consistently seen attending high-profile events, interacting with Hollywood's elite, and behaving in a way that suggested she was unfazed by the situation. Her legal claim of reputational damage was also under scrutiny, as she continued to be photographed at exclusive industry gatherings and seen engaging in social activities that contradicted the narrative of someone whose career had been irreparably harmed. The real problem, however, was not just the legal argument. It was public perception. In the world of law, concrete evidence carries weight, but in the court of public opinion, perception can be even more powerful. And at this moment, the perception was clear. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were not the victims they had claimed to be. The public had turned against them, and Justin Baldoni's legal team understood that this shift in sentiment was their greatest advantage. Behind the scenes, Blake and Ryan's legal team had a secret meeting with Justin Baldoni's lawyers. Their goal is to negotiate a settlement before things get worse. Blake wasn't just at risk of losing. She was at risk of paying millions in damages. Justin's legal team was now preparing to countersue for defamation. If successful, Blake and Ryan could be forced to pay massive financial penalties, not to mention the permanent damage to their careers. And so, for the first time since this battle began, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were forced to back down. This wasn't just about a legal battle. This was about power, influence, and what happens when celebrities underestimate the public. Blake and Ryan thought they could control the narrative. They thought they could outmaneuver Justin Baldoni. They thought they could laugh their way through a lawsuit, but they lost. Because no matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you have, the truth always comes out. If you enjoyed watching this video, give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more amazing celebrity content.